In one of your articles, you've described Solarpunk as an idea that refuses to be pinned down.
Yes.
How do we begin to frame this idea of Solarpunk as a actionable idea?
My go-to description for Solarpunk is usually that it is a movement in speculative fiction, art, fashion, and activism that seeks to answer and embody the question, what does a sustainable civilization look like and how do we get there? When you click on the Solarpunk hashtag on Tumblr, Reddit, or so on and so forth, what you see is an image of a lean-to greenhouse next to a method for capturing rainwater from a shed roof, next door to a permacultural project, next door to a walkable neighborhood, bike lanes, and so on and so forth. And what that has done to the medium of Solarpunk is that ideas are in juxtaposition with one another and trigger new ideas. And when you have this constant bricolage of ideas that are being thrown together, possibilities emerge. And Solarpunk being about the present, in part, means taking ideas that already exist in the world and then drawing them forward and, imagining what the world will be like when, this is everywhere, whether it's an idea around, sponge cities or community food forests or whatever. So I have that first description about it being a movement. And then on the second side, I say that Solarpunk is a container for ideas, for people to put things into and then see what emerges based on the juxtaposition or patchwork bricolage of other people's ideas. So I've called it a mimetic engine before for generating ideas about the future.
Does this container reject certain ideas?
Yes. There's two ways in which this happens. First is that Solarpunk as a genre, because of its kind of punkness, at its very core, has ideas of equitable power relations, justice,
right,
making space for indigenous voices, and people who have previously otherwise been overlooked, radical queer politics. I've often joked that Solarpunk is kind of the propaganda wing for the ecological, sustainable, or permaculture movements, right. In that what we're not trying to do is necessarily promote singular ideas, but we are more interested in the bringing together of multiple ideas and then pushing them forwards, and because these futures become settings for drama. They're not. The world building in Solarpunk is not necessarily like, oh, here's a fancy new technology, or that's going to save the day. Instead, it's very much, the Solarpunk stories that you get are more human dramas.
So there is this idea in the imagery of Solarpunk that it's a retrofit of our world today with what's available. Would that be a fair summary, for instance? Yes,
I think so. Solarpunk's role, both as an inspirational tool, but also as a mirror or a future mirror to show what the world might be like if we do the things that need doing, I think is very useful.
So it is a kind of a way of visualizing the future with what we have today, and so a lot of these. Again, back to the image, a lot of these images are often putting known technologies, not necessarily high tech, sometimes very low tech. The idea of a community farm as an element of regeneration in the city. That's hardly groundbreaking, but it is a retrofit of the city. That is radical in its own way, and punk in that it pushes back on the idea of the city and who owns it. But the other thing that struck me about Solarpunk was this idea of nature, that we have to reconnect with nature?
I think it certainly is at its core. It's about this renegotiation and around our relationship with nature. I personally, and speaking for myself as a solarpunk, not for other solarpunks, I am not particularly interested in solarpunk that is in the utopian mode.
Right.
I personally feel like solarpunk is as a genre, or people who are involved in solarpunk know that that we are entering disaster season, let's just say, and that the future isn't going to be great, but solarpunk is about diversity in adversity, and that we are en route to a better world, and what things are possible and what things do we need to do in order to get there, because one of the reasons why solarpunk begins to look the way it does, when you see images of the future in a kind of solarpunk mode, is because the things that we need to do mean that the future will look a certain way, if that makes any sense. We're not making up we're not making up this image of the future because we think it looks cool. It's because this is what the future should look like if we do the things that we need to do. And I use that phrase as a catch-all for, many, many things that we need to do.